why they said, new broom sweeps clean, but the old broom, know the corners. So I must apologize for what has happened. I won't try to explain or give you the details of what has taken place because I'm hearing about analog and digital and so on. And that is not my cup of tea. But I will just to say that on Friday we had a similar problem, but it was on the audio. Although the problem was not with the feed coming from the parliament, but coming out on GIS and so on, there was a problem. So we are back to what we had before, and I won't try to give you the details or the reasons why what happened, but just to say again, I do apologize, especially to the leader of the opposition who had to delay his presentation. But we are back on. So, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I pray you would continue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, nonetheless, one can get very upset, but still, we should not just let that rest like this. It is a reflection, Mr. Speaker, of probably Grenada and its internet connectivity. Mr. Speaker, I think I should speak to this here now, because this problem that we are having is not only in the parliament of our country. You know. At this important juncture in our country's history, where everything now relies on internet connectivity, why is it that we are paying for a service that we're not getting? I'm not talking about in the parliament, Mr. Speaker, but think about it. For 2 years, COVID now has been with us. The vast majority of the development of our young people, our young minds, our human resources is online. And Mr. Speaker, in many instances, this is what they have to deal with. I have dealt with it on many occasions as an instructor and as a volunteer that I give lessons to primary school and high school kids. While on Zoom, you might be in an important discussion or even in the middle of a test, internet gone. This is why I said in the Finance Committee meeting a few weeks ago that I will write to the NTRC to straighten some of these, because it makes no sense. Our people are put at a disadvantage. Mr. Speaker, I'll come back to the substantial budget document, but I think this is very important. Mr. Speaker, we in this government said that we are going back online, or we're going from online at home to back in the classroom, and we would have dual delivery. The government of Grenada contracted the companies to go into schools to put internet, CASIP and NTRC and whatever. Mr. Speaker, what they did not tell you, that was the biggest failure this year for this school year, in September. Maybe through you, Mr. Speaker, the minister could testify to that, or the PS in education, that it was set up, it was never tested, teachers go into the classroom to deliver. They could only get internet to certain parts of the school. So it was better to stay at home. Teachers have to go outside on the step or ask the neighbor for connection so that they could teach outside of the classroom, because we only have a certain number of students. And you know, we pay big money for the system to be in school. Up to this point, the system in school is neither here nor there. Same thing as what is going on here today. You see, we have this going on here. It is also going on in the school, Mr. Speaker. Who is being shortchanged? The future of our country. And we sit and that is okay. But it is not okay, Mr. Speaker. Because if we talk about the future development of our children, and probably I would just segue into my education piece. And Mr. Speaker, in my budget presentation, education is very important. And Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to listen to the press conference held by the Minister of Education. And she quoted some figures. In terms of for the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker, it seems like only 55% of our kids were connected in some way or another. The other 45, Mr. Speaker, for 2 years. For 2 years, some of them had no contact with neither teacher, nor classroom, nor schools. That was what was said in the press conference. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, in terms of the delivery, I was pretty much shocked, because as a young teacher, I remember, well, Mr. Speaker, you would know more than me. You were the chief education officer one time. You were the PS in education. You done it all. In terms of reporting, Mr. Speaker, for all this time, only 70% of the teachers reported some form of another. What happened to the other 30%? What happened to the other 30%? Mr. Speaker, in terms of the education, remember the government spent all this money for the tablet and the notebook and the this and the that. And then you discover now the operating system on the tablet is not compatible to what that can be done. Yes, the kids got the tablet, but then again, it goes back to connectivity. I mean, in some cases, some of them may have had internet. In a lot of cases, a lot of them did not have internet. I think government had a program to hook them up with internet, but at the same time, again, just as we experience here today. And imagine you have a child that has the tablet or so. Some of them are more knowledgeable, more than the parent in terms of the operation. And if they can't do it, the parents knows nothing about it. Mr. Speaker, you know what I'll propose here today? And I hope that it will be taken seriously. And that should be looked at. I see we give stimulus packages and stimulus packages and stimulus package. How about a stimulus package for education? I would propose a stimulus package for education. How do you go about doing it? Mr. Speaker, you know, I got a telephone call, a couple telephone calls. A couple friend of mine graduated from university abroad, came back home just fall 2019, and they were just about to go into the workforce, the job market. Some of them even graduated from St. George's University and just about to go into the job market in 2019. And just as 2020 turned, COVID-19 came. Some of them had interview and was supposed to start. You know that start never took place because business closed up. So they had to come back home. Or they had to go back and live with their parents. And for the last 2 years, they have been home doing absolutely nothing. All over. You know what was sad? One of them said to me, Mr. Clement, with my degree, I might have to go and work in the debushing program. I mean, I could have told her nothing is wrong with it. But is that what we will reduce our university graduates to? If we have a stimulus package for education, why don't we pump some monies in after-school programs, using those same young people and paying them to give lessons on Zoom because they are well in tune with the internet connectivity and how to do it. They're home. We have some retired teachers too. Bring them back. Open up the community centers so that these 2 years that are lost to the future of the country, we may not be able to get all back, but we can get some back. Put a stimulus package in education. That will be money well spent for the future. We're talking about Plan 2035. If this is lost, if some of our kids are lost now by what is going on here, then our country will be at a loss. Mr. Speaker, what just transpired, and I had some connection there on social media, to say the least, it's embarrassing for Grenada. Not for the Leader of Her Majesty's opposition, you know. What is the NTRC going to do? What is the government going to do? Who will be held responsible? The CACID program and so forth that we boast about? Even that too, Mr. Speaker, was not implemented to the fullest. Mr. Speaker, we have fallen short and we have failed in this respect. Mr. Speaker, going back to the details of the budget document, and I hope that will go a long way, and I know the good lady probably took note of that. And to me, putting a stimulus package in education, that is innovation. And I hope it will be considered. Not because it comes from me, but because it is good for the children who have fallen short and have fallen through the cracks already. I mean, you walk the street every day, Mr. Speaker, and you wonder why some of them are where they are, even today. Because the parents gone to work, the children are at home without no supervision. That is a difficult place to be, a very difficult place to be. Mr. Speaker, before I was interrupted, I was talking about the implementation of the budget. And in the implementation, I was looking at the capital side of it. And it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, at the amount of expenditure that are given on the capital side of the budget, it says here, the capital expenditure performance, local revenue 25 million, grants 195.4 million, loans 41.3 million. But Mr. Speaker, it is interesting to note that out of that $195 million grant, it says the National Transformation Fund contributed $152 million out of that. Mr. Speaker, through you, you've been in this house here a long time. Since when we call in the National Transformation Fund grants? I have looked through several budget documents, and most grants I see come from outside sources, but here the government of Grenada is giving itself a grant through the through the NTF fund. First time it ever happened. Mr. Speaker, this is why, before I said I would be calling for a full accounting of the NTF funds and how it is spent. It is called the National Transformation Fund. And if it is spent on capital project, maybe I could make the statement. Mr. Speaker, it seems that the full strategy of this government is to sell passports and buy concrete and asphalt, because that is where most of the money went. And even so it was spent that way, it was not fully implemented. Mr. Speaker, I ask the question, is that sustainable in this country at this point in time? How long can the country use this strategy of development selling passports and buying asphalt and concrete. There was one time I hear we talk about the concrete government. That was in the early 90s, Mr. Speaker, you would remember that. But Mr. Speaker, moreover, the member went on in his delivery, and it perplexed me that we are going so much into asphalt and concrete. He mentioned opening up a second asphalt plant in Telescope. Mr. Speaker, if my recent memory serves me right, wasn't Telescope, there were some environmental issues in Telescope that the government had to shut it down? What really changed that now we're going to be opening up Telescope to get aggregate material and do asphalt again? Is it that we are saying now that we are going to contribute to the economic development of the area so that people would get jobs and more jobs for the boys at the cost of the environment? Mr. Speaker, I could say a lot about that, but I will come back to that. So let me get my stride back, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a lot was said in the budget. And indeed, when I look at what was said, I asked myself the question that I remember they said last year. When I checked, I had to laugh at this one. And when I look at it, I said, oh my goodness. At least this year, it is not the Grinch who stole Christmas, but it is Santa Claus that come this time. But I will get back to that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in his presentation of this year's budget, there are a few topics that I would love to talk on, and the people of Grenada would love me to do so. And you know, before I get here, Mr. Speaker, it was said to me today and the days before, Mr. Clement, behave yourself. And should I say, I'm not behaving, but I will behave. Mr. Speaker, and when I spoke to the deceptiveness of this budget as was presented, I will show you. Mr. Speaker, in so much so, last year we came here and we debated, big debate in Parliament. Not a word you heard about Grenlec. Not a single word, you know. After the debate, like all hell broke loose. We hear that the government now has to purchase Grenlec at this exorbitant sum of money. They had to pay Grenlec lawyer, they had to pay their lawyer $30-something million. And you see, Mr. Speaker, there are two things. You know, like they'll say, the sin of commission and the sin of omission. What was not in the budget and what is not in the budget now can be talked about. Mr. Speaker, we look at the structure of Grenada Electricity Company. And probably one of the debates that I listened to, and that probably you could go back to the records of 1994 in York House, when the argument was made against the sale of Grenlec. It was the Prime Minister who put up a formidable argument that the company should not be sold. Nonetheless, it was sold. Today, the government of Grenada has Grenlec again. Mr. Speaker, is it right to say that it is only because Grenlec was bought back that the government could now move to reduce VAT on electricity? I ask you the question, Mr. Speaker. Does VAT belong to WRB or Grenlec? Who does VAT go to? So why is it? Why, Mr. Speaker, we have to wait until we buy back Grenlec to remove VAT on electricity? Mr. Speaker, that is not true. That is not true. So why should he come to this house and make a statement like that? VAT could be removed anytime because VAT belongs to the government. While it is a small portion, even the taxes on petrol, Mr. Speaker, does not belong to the WRB or Grenlec. It belongs to the government. Don't make it seem as if we had to buy back the company so that we could move these things. I mean, some people in Grenada think, Mr. Speaker, talking to me or you? Not really. Not really. Only the non-fuel charges. That's right. But not moreover, Mr. Speaker. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, we could talk a lot about these things, but the Grenadian people must know. And you see, Mr. Speaker, all these goodies did not just come like that, you know. We see a lot of things happening, but it's a good thing too. I have friends in high places and low places, and some of you guys only get to know on a need-to-know basis, because there is a lot of things that are going on inside the ambits of government that you would never know anything about, because it's under lock and key. Only Father and Son will get to know. That's like God and Jesus Christ himself, the country's resources. Mr. Speaker, looking at it this way, let me make a proposal again. And I love to go back to history. Mr. Speaker, you remember before 2008? The price of electricity was up there. Government had some innovative ideas. Why is it that these innovative ideas cannot come back again? You know what we did? You know what the minister proposed? That we promote reducing electricity use in Grenada. What did we do? They bought energy-saving bulbs and distributed to the entire country. Everybody was into energy-saving bulbs. Mr. Speaker, you know the bulbs now are so efficient. Let me tell you, through you, Mr. Speaker, it is called LEDs. Mr. Speaker, my electricity bill was about $450, $475 a few years ago. All that I do, I could not get it down. I spent about $500 to $600 at the time, and I bought LEDs. Mr. Speaker, after the first month of changing it out, my electricity bill went from $400 plus to $175. I say, yes, I get them now. Why don't you go back to 2008, Mr. Minister, through you, Mr. Speaker? I think it would have been more profitable for the government to invest in LEDs and distribute it across Grenada so that the people's electricity bill could have been reduced. But Mr. Speaker, we talk about reducing it, and you would not have to pay those charges on 500 kilowatts or less. This is good to some extent. But what was not said, Mr. Speaker, maybe starting from January of next year, but they did not specify any length of time. I don't know if it's forever. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, most of the places that pay high electricity bill might be companies in Grenada here that have electricity as part of the overall cost. But if we move to only give those that are 500 kilowatt or less a break, if I have a company and I have to pay electricity bill $20,000, $30,000 a month, which is so, do I absorb this cost for myself? No, Mr. Speaker. I pass it on to the consumer. So therefore, the consumer in the long run will have to fork up the money to pay the bill through cost of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, you see, sometimes we speak to one end of our mouth, and then when we dig deep into it, we get the real meaning there. Mr. Speaker, in the budget document, the minister was so happy. He said that we're going to cap petrol prices at $15. But, Mr. Speaker, capping it at $15 could be a two-edged sword. Why do I say that, Mr. Speaker? Government, on every gallon of gas in this country today, collects about $5.50 on every gallon. So that if gas price now is $17.50, you know, out of that, government will get $5.50, so $12 goes to the other entities. Let's take, for instance, now, and it is expected that during the summer, gas price will go up. God forbid, gas price goes over $22.50 a gallon. What will happen in terms of the cost? Wouldn't government have to chip in to subsidize? Because we pegged it at $15 a gallon. What would happen now if gas price goes down to, say, $10 a gallon? Then again, government would get a windfall. I thought before 2008, or somewhere along the line, we had a formula. How come that we cannot go back to this formula and reduce it accordingly? But Mr. Speaker, if we take those measures and government is out of all these taxes and funding, my question to you, Mr. Speaker, where will the money come from to pay for government services? In the budget, Mr. Speaker, in this budget document here, if you look at the petrol tax that should be collected this year is around $60 million. When you do that, well, the numbers in the budget must be shifted. Mr. Speaker, at the end of my presentation, I will make a recommendation. And I will make a serious recommendation as to what should be done. Because, Mr. Speaker, I am wondering, is Grenless now going to become Grenada's government little piggy bank for slush funds to do as we please whenever? Mind you, the government now owns, what, 70-something% of the shares. What happened to the other shareholders? I mean, in most times, most companies, the majority shareholder have no respect for those small people. What happened to the workers there in terms of profit sharing? Shouldn't all that be negotiated? But no, we are in charge now. Anything that has power in it, we want it. The power company, so we take it. The power this, we take it. You know, I've been listening to Parliament a long time ago. And there is only one man inside here that talks about power. Power, power, power. If you look at the member for St. George's in Parliament, I could remember, and say, it's only power you want. I want Tillman already, but it's only power you're looking for. Power, power, power. No wonder why they moved to take back the power company. Because there is the word power in it. Mr. Speaker, if there is power in your name too, you'll take it. Because all they like is power. I could say it because I've been around a long time. I could say it, and I will continue to say it. Mr. Speaker, going back to the document, and I must touch on some of these things as my time is going and going quickly. Mr. Speaker, I dare not leave this house without talking about healthcare in the country. Mr. Speaker, even before I do so, you know, I have friends who work in the system. I have a lot of friends who work in the system. I'd like to say, Mr. Speaker, even some of my what used to be my baby work in the system. I see today the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Sean Charles. He was a student of mine, Hillsborough Secondary School. I remember when I introduced chemistry to that school, I had to beg him to do chemistry. And I have a lot of friends who are doctors in the hospital that I also had, I'm proud of because I was part of the development. And some of them are on the COVID team too, close friends of mine. And Mr. Speaker, I am so grateful for the work that they have done for this country. It's priceless, to say the least. Mr. Speaker, you know, we talk about caring for people. And I remember, Mr. Speaker, as we go through COVID-19, I saw the sacrifice that was made by the frontline workers, especially some of these doctors and nurses at the General Hospital. And Mr. Speaker, in any way that I can, Mr. Speaker, it seems like we're having a full house today. So just giving them a chance to settle down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was talking about the frontline workers. And your heart goes out to those frontline workers. And Mr. Speaker, you know, it happened that one of those nurses on the COVID team, I heard her name called here in Parliament. She got very sick even unto death. And I realized, because I know her and her family, for 2 days, sleep was taken from me. And the anxiety that I felt was when I was out of Grenada during Ivan, and you cannot get through. And until she came out of that intensive care unit and she was able to breathe again, then you tell yourself, oh my goodness, what the sacrifice that were made. But Mr. Speaker, you know, the message came to me. And through one of my team members, the doctors and nurses at the General Hospital is crying out for help. Not for the 1 month pay, they will accept that. But Mr. Speaker, you know, a lot of them have been working without contract. Working without contract, working on 1 year contract or working month to month. And what they said, Mr. Clement, while that is good, that we were compensated a little bit, but I would prefer to be permanent so that I can build myself. The state that they're working now, and some of the public servants are working now, they can't do anything for themselves. They too would like to go to the financial institution with job stability, to get a loan to build a house and to do this and to do that. But some of the financial institutions will just give you something for the life of your contract. Mr. Speaker, it is as if work has no meaning in this country. We have decimated the public service. Is that the gratefulness we have for our workers who have given the blood, the sweat, and the tears to this country? Mr. Speaker, the doctors and the nurses at the General Hospital are very concerned today about the security. Yes, you have a security when you enter the front door, but these days, because of the stress of patients in the hospital, they are very violent towards the doctors and nurses. Last week, one of my princesses in the hospital, a doctor, got beaten by a patient. no security. What are we going to do about that? And many cases you talk about, because imagine you at the hospital, your family can visit you, nobody can visit you, maybe one visit at a time, or if they are not vaccinated, they can't come. And you there, you need help, you need to see somebody, and as a patient, you're stressed out, you get violent. Check out the General Hospital, and you will see a lot of that is taking place now. The doctors and nurses and orderlies are calling for protection in the General Hospital. The doctors, the nurses, they are calling to be made permanent on the staff. You think it's easy? It's not easy, Mr. Speaker. You're working month after month, and sometimes you get your salary on time, sometimes a week after, because you are on contract or not at all. One young lady called me. She graduated as a nurse. At first, she used to be a nurse aide. They said to her, well, develop yourself. She developed herself. She went to school. She got her degree in nursing. She went back to work, and she said to me, you know, they put me under grain case again, so I go back with the same position I had, same salary, same everything. So, Mr. Clement, why did I go? Well, better to just stay where I am. This thing about work and work-related benefit is a sad, sad situation in our country. I had a conversation with Miss Rachel Bartholomew just before she passed away. Everybody knows Fat Joe's daughter. And sometimes it comes to you that you might visit somebody and you might ask, or before you leave them, if you know this was the last time that you're seeing them, what will you say to them? Mr. Speaker, I visited the lady, at least her home, and I sat down opposite on the table with her. And the last thing that she said to me, Mr. Clement, do you think I will get my pension and gratuity? That was the Thursday. The next week, she was dead. And Mr. Speaker, as the public workers now begin to retire, and they realize now that they're coming to the end of the service, some of them are still paying mortgages. Some of them still have the children to send to school. Some of them are in the position and they realize, I'm not going home with anything substantial. What do I do? What do you do? Mr. Speaker, the plight of the public workers are very serious. Mr. Speaker, I move now to agriculture. The minister, through you, Mr. Speaker, may have a lot to say or nothing at all on agriculture, because...
Mr. Speaker, just on a point of order, the member said that members of a doctor or nurse at the General Hospital was beaten.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, this is my presentation. No, he would have a chance to Mr. Speaker, the standing orders.
He placed it as a member, as a point of fact.
Mr. Speaker, this is the budget debating. Okay, well, all right. Right.
Proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the time, the member will get his due time, an hour to make his remarks. Mr. Speaker, I know the interruption comes and it kind of breaks your stride, but I'm talking about agriculture now. Mr. Speaker, agriculture, there was one time we say in this country, agriculture is everybody's business. Remember that song, Everybody's Business? Mr. Speaker, we are in a time now when it seems like agriculture is degraded to almost to the trash can of our economic development. But I do believe, Mr. Speaker, that it should be an integral part of Grenada's development. Because I too try a little bit in agriculture. I live in Mardi Gras, so I have a little spread that I get involved in agriculture. But Mr. Speaker, let me go back to the history of where we are. Mr. Speaker, I do believe probably you serve in the Ministry of Agriculture too. Between the year 1990 to 1995 was very critical in Grenada's history. Mr. Speaker, you remember, and I know you will, some of them are too young for that because they were not around in the debate. Do you remember the politics of Millibog? NNP came into office in 1995 too on the politics of Millibog. We beat it from start to finish. The politics of Millibog. Today in Grenada, Mr. Speaker, there is something more serious than Millibog, but nobody is beating it. The infestation of blight that is caused by the scale insect. When you talk about productivity drop, Mr. Speaker, I spoke to that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Millibog was kind of specific to certain plants. But the blight that is in this country affecting agriculture affects everything. Short crops, citrus, mangoes, sapodilla, avocado, everything that you have, so that the productivity of those trees have fallen drastically. You saw on the news the other day, because of blight, a whole field of soursop had to be destroyed. We saw because of blight, the citrus have to be destroyed. We saw because of blight, short crops, you're not getting anything from it. And that is a fact. What are we doing about it? Piecemeal. Piecemeal, Mr. Speaker. Because why? Agriculture is not important to the development of this country. But I can tell you, agriculture is still important to the development of this country. We say nothing is wrong with agriculture because it's on the uptick. Why? Because I don't think cocoa and nutmeg is touched that much with that blight. But what about everything else? Are we paying attention? I wonder if the blight is hitting us because of our situation. I listened to one of our members saying, this period required leadership, and it is only experienced leadership that could have taken us out of Ivan and Emily, that could have taken out of the depression, could take us out of the COVID. I wonder if it's because of leadership that this blight is hitting the country too. It could go both ways, you know. Because, Mr. Speaker, some people, blight could take them. And if blight take them, blight take the country too. Mr. Speaker, if we have to be serious about agriculture development in this country, we have to think beyond what we are doing here in Grenada. Same thing every year. I mean, as it was said, if I was in another place, I might have used a different word. Mr. Speaker, the price of agriculture, goods and services. I mean, some of them have never even planted a seed. And even if they try, they can't plant a seed. It would not grow. Mr. Speaker, the price of everything relating to agriculture in the stores went up. Fertilizer, seeds, pest control, everything. Mr. Speaker, you know, a couple of years ago, you could have paid $45 for a tray of tomatoes. Today, a tray of tomato seedlings would cost you between $75 and $100. Mr. Speaker, before COVID, a bag of fertilizer was 50-something, 60-something dollars. Now it's almost $100. You go to the store today, it is at $50. You go tomorrow, it's at $75. I went to buy a package of cabbage seeds. It was $34. When I went back the next week, the guy laughed at me and told me it is $76. I asked him what happened between this week and next week. I had to put it back. I mean, say what? At this rate, we have started to suffer in this country. We have already started importing a lot of the vegetables, carrots, tomatoes, bell peppers. It is coming in. Because some of the small farmers that produce it cannot go and buy a package of tomato seeds at $300 or $500. Mr. Speaker, I paid $480 for a packet of Delhi tomato seeds. And I'm asking myself, maybe I can afford it. Yes? But what about the small farmer? Can he afford it? Not really, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about agriculture, we have to talk about poultry too. Before COVID, the chicken farmers would buy a chicken for $3. Now the chicken, the little chick, is $5.00. Feed went up by 6%. But you know what? Despite all of that, the supermarkets and so forth want to buy the meat at the same price. But yet the cost of the goods went up. Yes, we will say that the cost of the goods went up because all over the world transportation cost goes up and everything goes up. And I will get to that in a little bit, Mr. Speaker. But we need to take care of our farmers here in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, a friend of mine, I went to St. Andrews, and a friend of mine told me, Mr. Clement, when you're going back down, pass by me, I have a bunch of plantains for you. I mean, my question is, what am I going to do with a bunch of plantains? Why don't you? He says to me, Mr. Clement, you see plantain all over Grenville, all over St. Andrews. People have plantain because why? They cannot get it sold to the market that they used to have before. So it went down south, but down south now find new markets. So you're seeing plantains all over Grenada. And this is something, again, that you have it and you cannot get rid of it. Just last night, one of my friends told me right at his home, he has over $10,000 worth of clothes that he cannot pass on. The only good thing is clothes don't spoil. Mr. Speaker, you remember what you said on Friday? The man wants to know how he's going to sell his maize and his nutmeg and his cocoa. This is the question that the farmers are asking. But Mr. Speaker, that is just in agriculture. What about fisheries? Oh my goodness. Mr. Speaker, you know I have brothers and brothers and brothers in the fishing industry, a lot of them. And during COVID-19, they suffered and suffered greatly. Imagine at one time, they would go out there, spend a week and come back, and it was okay. But they do not go west anymore, they go east now. So they are taken 250 to 300 miles east out in the Atlantic. So they have to spend, Mr. Speaker, not 7 days again, but 14 days. And when they come back here, they cannot get the fish sold because they don't have no transportation. So they have to find other markets like St. Vincent or Trinidad. Who is losing out? It is here in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you would now, on a point of order, according to the standing orders, you would read that you must have show some respect here. Should I read it, Mr. Speaker? "40, Mr. Speaker. It speaks on budget debate, that while the debate is going on, that we should behave ourselves with decorum. That is.
Thank you.
But if I am interrupted in the House conversation.
Yes, sir. Honorable gentlemen and ladies, let's try to be as quiet as possible so that the leader of the opposition can make his delivery.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Speaker.
you.
Mr. Speaker, and that was agriculture. And I wish we can look into the plight of the fisher folks that has to be running helter-skelter, looking for market. But I think I made mention of this here, and it should be made mention again, that maybe government should step in to try to do some regulations so that these men and women could have meaning to what they do. Mr. Speaker, imagine you are, as a fisherman, you go out in the Atlantic Ocean, you go out with the company with those guys from Trinidad and Barbados because they're all in the same business. They could go to Barbados or Trinidad and sell the tuna. In Barbados, $8 US a pound. In Trinidad, $8.50 US a pound. In Grenada, 5 EC a pound. How can that be fair, Mr. Speaker? That can never be fair. Because when they go out in company, the boats from Trinidad or Barbados could spend a week. But the boats from Grenada would have to spend 2 weeks because they have to catch enough fish so that they could clear expense. Mr. Speaker, to suit out a tuna boat to go out in the Atlantic would cost the fishermen between $15,000 to $20,000, fuel and ice, and food. So before you leave the Atlantic, you have to make sure that you cover your costs. So you have to get enough to cover those costs, Mr. Speaker. And so it cannot be fair if the price is not reasonable for them. Mr. Speaker, I am calling again on this government to look at the structure in terms of the price that are given to these fishermen so that they can justify coming to Grenada and sell the catch. Because if I am in the business, if I am in that business, Mr. Speaker, I would not choose Grenada where the prices can be so low. I will go to foreign markets to sell. And again, this would affect our local economy here. Mr. Speaker, I did agriculture. I will touch a little bit on tourism. Mr. Speaker, you know, I have gone through the budget document here. And tourism is indeed a very important part these days of our country's economic development, it seems, because we promote it, and we promote it. And from time to time, it is here on page 20 of his delivery in terms of this document. And I see we invested in hotels and hotel room and in infrastructure, and it is a good thing. But Mr. Speaker, when I read and I ask myself the question, I was kind of stumped. Homer Limited, this project entails a 240 hotel room luxury development across 3 properties in Chublu. Beautiful. But what struck me though, it says here that It's a $60 million EC dollar project that is carded for implementation in 2022 and will create employment for 12 persons. I asked if the minister bounced his head. 12 persons? I cannot understand that. You have a 240-room hotel and 12 persons to run it? I question that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I question too, look lower down. It says Star Development Limited, located in Point Saline. This is a 60-room luxury hotel and spa. Cost of EC, $56 million. When completed, it will employ 15 persons. 15 persons in the kitchen alone. But then I was corrected because you see, my team said, no, Mr. Clement, they are right, 12 persons and 15 persons. I said, well, how that is so? In those entities, the upper echelons of the staff goes to foreigners. So we, the Grenadian people, get to saw the wood and draw the water. That is the kind of development, how you get 12 persons for 240 rooms, 12 persons. That is the prep cook and the dishwashers and to sweep the yard and maybe even to make the bed. But go down there now. The managers, the upper echelons, our people are not good enough for that. You see, with this kind of development, I know some people love slavery. And one time they said they don't care if they have to be a house slave. Mr. Speaker, you would remember that. Some of them are too young to know that. So they don't care if they have to be a house slave to Mr. Blaise. So you don't care if the Grenadian people have to become slaves in their own country. With that kind of structure, maybe, Mr. Speaker, I can ask the minister if he wants, probably when he rebut, he could put in the correct figures. That is the kind of tourism development we want in Grenada? I think not. I would want to get involved in this business, but not to denigrate our people to the service industry, to serve again. Why can't we teach them to be independent? That is why I say there ain't no innovation in this year's budget. Mr. Speaker, coming back to this budget document under tourism, some of the ones that were there last year are not on this document this year. But if you go back to many budget documents, you would see the Livera project. It's like the Livera project is in perpetuity. Every year the Livera project, every year the Livera project. When will the Livera project come to tuition? And sometimes we are so happy to hear about it because it will bring development and jobs to the area. The Port Louis project, and the Silver Sands and so forth. Mr. Speaker, as we turn our attention to tourism in this time, I wonder, do we have our mind in the right place for the development of this country? Mr. Speaker, what is taking place in the world today? What is taking place in the world today do not lend itself so much again to tourism, We have to rethink and redefine the paradigm that we are dealing with. And if we cannot bring meaningful development to this country, look how many times we are affected in a negative way. Tourism, one little wind blow, and it goes out of the box. Today, like I said, we have to look at COVID-19 with the new variant, Omicron. So again, insecurity in the market. I wish us well. I want to wish us well. But it's something to consider. Mr. Speaker, that was for tourism. Mr. Speaker, the next point Well, Mr. Speaker, I had so much of breaks there. Do we have any time as to where I am in terms of time? I would love to get a little bit of insight as to where I am.
You resume that report. And we would have quick meeting before we have your
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I go on, there is another topic that I want to talk on here, and that is the removal of VAT on certain items. You know, Mr. Speaker, I was going through that document last night, and I look at the document again, and I see certain items VAT was removed. Mr. Speaker, on page 41, and I asked myself the question, how did they come up with these extra items? And what makes it that these items are not any items? I'll start from the bottom. Split peas, Mr. Speaker. Why split peas are not all peas? A lot of Grenadians use lentil peas or some form of dry peas or black-eyed peas, but just split peas. I think you could rethink it again and include all peas. Because if you know about the kitchen, anybody that cooks in the kitchen would know that you do not keep split peas long in the kitchen. Lentil peas have a longer shelf life, and a lot of people resort to lentil peas. I do not know if you're looking on the VAT, because split peas take weevil very easily, and if you have your canteen, everything else goes when split peas go. But just split peas, and then you have virgin olive oil too at the disposal, which is a lot healthier. But you could use vegetable oil, the normal vegetable oil, not all oils. And then you look at turkey. What is only turkey parts? Mr. Speaker, and the one on top. Saving the best for last. You know, Mr. Speaker, I never know they had VAT on sourfish in Grenada. Did you know that? So he removed VAT on sourfish. Mr. Speaker, in order to give meaning to the development of poor people in this country, we have to widen the scope of cost of living in this country. You know, the last time I came to Parliament, and I must say this here, I came to Parliament and I talk about the vaccinated and who's not vaccinated, and teachers might be going back to school and some of them are not vaccinated. And a gentleman came to my door at my home and he asked me, Mr. Clement, why are you going to talk about the teachers unvaccinated for? Things are bad in this country. People are feeling the effect of COVID-19 because they're out of work. Mr. Speaker, while we're talking about the reduction on VAT in this country, on certain goods, one of the biggest sector today that is spurring economic activities in this country is the construction sector. What is the price of construction goods in this country? I have one person last year told me that they had gotten a loan of $300,000 to do the house. It was delayed. And now that $300,000 cannot cut it anymore. It more look like $450,000. If we want economic activities to continue in this country, we cannot let the construction sector fall. How nobody in the government think about reducing the prices or the VAT on construction items? That would go a long way in helping this country go forward. Mr. Speaker, you know what they talk about? Plywood. Plywood, the cost. Before COVID, it was 80-something, maybe 90-something, 105. Today, the cost of plywood, Mr. Speaker, is 150-something, 160-something dollars. An integral part of the construction industry. What are we doing about it? Mr. Speaker, an importer called me, and she said to me, she do not know how long she would be in the business of importing materials again into Grenada. Before COVID, she would bring in a container. The cost of shipping that container, $3,000 US. In September, she brought in a container into Grenada. The cost of the same container is $5,800 US. Then at the port, you know the CIF. We charge it on the cost of the goods, the insurance, and the freight. So what you would find now at the port is that the amount of goods in transaction at the port will fall, but maybe the price of the taxes would not fall, because the same container with the same goods with a higher price, the insurance went up, the transportation went up, so the custom charges on that container went up. So who feels it? The consumer. And what will happen? The price of the goods goes up, so the demand goes down. So less comes into the country. Mr. Speaker, while we may say we're collecting the same or more revenue at the port, but it is harming our little economy moving forward. Because it is the same thing that happened to the price of all the material, construction material that come into the countries. Consider, Mr. Minister, for the sake of Grenada and for the sake of the brothers and sisters around, doing something with the price of construction material. If you want to score points for the election coming up shortly, then this is a good place to start. People may talk about it and they will be grateful. Mr. Speaker, as we go there, and I dare to go there, in terms of this delivery here, I look into this document, and there is a lot to be said about it. Mr. Speaker, not only the price at the port, or the price at the pump, or the price of medication, or the price of agriculture products, of the price of learning, of all these prices that have been affected in a negative way in terms of the uphill trajectory that we are going. But our people too. It is not an easy thing when brothers and sisters that you know come to you, that would not normally come to you and tell you that it is very difficult for them to make it day by day. At one time, you were in a position where you would feel the pain, but I do not know what is going on these days, Mr. Speaker. Are you feeling the pain of our people in this COVID time? so that you're celebrating because things are getting so good. Mr. Speaker, left out of this budget document was oil and gas, the famous oil and gas. I wonder why it was left out. But you see, some of us cannot help ourselves. It was not entirely left out. In the preamble to the budget, last Sunday, I listened to the minister play down oil and gas. Mr. Speaker, I said at the beginning, we can talk about what is included, but we can also talk about what is not included. And Mr. Speaker, while it was said that we should not concentrate on oil and gas, I should ask, and maybe I can do that now, the Prime Minister to contact his counterparts in Trinidad and Guyana and ask them if they are downplaying the production of oil. And each and every one of us inside here know Guyana probably is the only country during COVID-19 that is on the uptick because they found oil and gas. Trinidad is not doing too bad because they have oil and gas. But to say in Grenada, we should not talk about the exploration. Mr. Speaker, there is something else inside there, And when my team and I went into it, it was uncovered. Sometime during last year or this year, Mr. Speaker, didn't GPG signed an arrangement with the government of Trinidad and Tobago in terms of oil exploration? And if it is explored, Mr. Speaker, Grenada will get royalties. Yes, Grenada will get royalties. Even if it's 5%, it's a lot. If it's 10%, it's a lot. We're not asking for more. But I remember the minister said that if oil is gotten, the public workers would get the raise, the people on the SID program will get raise, these social programs will improve, that social program is going to be improved. Mr. Speaker, you notice that all these things were said at one time. I said, when it was announced that we discovered oil, I too believe it, And then I think again and I say, well, maybe I don't believe it. But they tell me, Mr. Clement, you better believe it. Why? I ask you the question, Mr. Minister, through you, Mr. Speaker. Isn't extraction going to be started next year, March? The Grenadian people must know that. But you see, we have to keep it quiet. Because if Grenada get involved in the extraction of oil, there is something else that we cannot touch. The Green Climate Fund that stands at $600 million US. You see, you cannot have both. It's one or the other. So we try to deceive the international community. And the international community is seeking now. Mr. Speaker, the Green Climate Fund, we love to pose. We pose. And that fund is there. Guyana cannot get into the Green Climate Fund because they're drilling. Trinidad cannot get. Grenada may not get because if Grenada is extracting, but we cannot say we're getting, but we have to keep it hush-hush. Just like the buyback of Greenland. We have to keep that hush-hush. But the nation must know. You will get the chance to debate in this house and to rebut. But what I am saying, tell the Grenadian people the truth. Mr. Speaker, I want to make one last point. The member and the Minister of Finance stood in this house and looked across. He said that the leader of the NDC party is now, he was or he still is the lawyer for WRB. They would know more than anything else. Politics turns sometimes on a dime. Mr. Speaker, I would make this one recommendation again to this House. This one last recommendation. Government now owns over 70% shares in Grenlec. I would ask this, and I do not want there any regrets. I would ask the government, before election is called next year or the year after, whenever it is called, make sure that we divest the shares of Grenlec to the Grenadian people. I too may want to own a couple shares. Because in 1994, we sat in your house and listened to the debate against the sale of Grenlec. Mr. Speaker, God forbid, as election turns on a dime, just perhaps, Grenlec might end up back in the hands of WRB. You want to take that chance? I wouldn't take that chance. It would be a very sad thing in Grenada for us to come to this point. I don't want to say at the end of our days, because I don't have that authority, only the Almighty. But for this embarrassing thing to happen, where you lose control over government and probably lose control of the power company. I say the power company, I didn't say Grenlec, the power company, because they like power. Power, power, power. Mr. Speaker, in this year's budget debate, I believe that we have settled on some stuff here. And I hope that in your consideration and your reconsideration, that you would recalibrate the figures to fit the giveaway. I mean, I still have to ask the question. We see almost $100 million budget deficit. How are you going to make up that? You're cutting taxes on petrol, you're cutting, which is one of your main source there. And Mr. Speaker, I kind of laugh, because we're talking about going green. You know, the German government, today in Germany, electricity in Germany, renewables is between 20 to 25%. Last week, the German government announced that by 2030, there will be 80% renewables. On Friday, Mr. Speaker, the minister here announced that Grenada would be 100% renewable by the year 2030. We're not even 1% yet. What magic is that? How are you going to get there in 2030? You didn't even start yet. Germany, that has the capacity and the mechanism to do it, announced by 2030 there will be 80% renewable, but Grenada is 100%. And we're not even making solar panels in Grenada. Huh? How are you going to do it? The Green Climate Fund, that might be coming to you just now, and it may be surprising because they know, and they're asking questions. Mr. Speaker, as I close, I will close on this here, Mr. Speaker. You know, I look at the development, and Grenada is a pretty young nation. Very much so. Young people, and we talk about our young people are the people of the future. All power in the hands of the young people. And I ask myself the question, are we giving them that opportunity to be what they want to be? In his wisdom, he became Minister of Youth. Minister of Youth. Mr. Speaker, you know, at one time, I would always hear a report on youth and youth development in this house. Since the minister became the Minister of Youth, I have never heard a report on youth in this house. As a matter of fact, I sat deliberately in the Finance Committee meeting 2 Fridays ago, and youth was not even mentioned. When they talk about the Ministry of Social Security, they did not even say youth. But you know, Mr. Speaker, I asked what happened to the Minister of Youth before, or the Junior Minister of Youth, and you know what they tell me? They say if you want to find the junior minister, you better go on TikTok, because she might be singing and dancing there. You see, Mr. Speaker, politics is not a beanbag sport. And I have been through the ringers a lot of times all over the place. But we have seen a paradigm shift, because we take the young people for granted. They have been abused, misused, and just not even think about. So this is why we are having a paradigm shift in Grenada. If I have to help them get there, I will help them get there. And trust me, you wouldn't want to make me have me in a laser sight. Mr. Speaker, in closing, we come into this house and we rage against youthfulness. But as I tell them, and as the Holy Book says, Paul speaking to Timothy, don't let no man despise your youth. The Bible also says that young men, I chose you because you are strong. I know some of them figure you're as young as you feel, Mr. Speaker. And the things that they could do, the youth cannot do it. But Mr. Speaker, there is a different spirit in this Grenada. There is a different spirit in this place. And what you would see the transformation of Grenada by the same young people that are misused and despised in this country. And Mr. Speaker, when that wave comes, I know it will sweep many of us away. But as the good South hymn always say, change is going to come, and change is going to come in this country very soon. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. God bless.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Again, I realize that the delays and so on did not affect you too badly. Honorable Parliamentary Representative for St. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the estimates of revenue and expenditures as presented by the member for St. George Southeast and the Minister for Finance. Mr. Speaker, I associate myself very deeply with the theme of this budget, protecting lives, safeguarding livelihoods, investing for growth and resilience. Mr. Speaker, I find this theme very appropriate, especially in this very COVIDious times. And I want to say here categorically that I highly compliment the 2 ministers for health and all the staff in the Ministry of Health, and I compliment the government for prudent fiscal management, to have the finances to give support to the ministry and the team of the Ministry of Health so that they could do the work that they needed to do to save lives. This government has done well, Mr. Speaker, and I think commendations are in place. We have safeguarded livelihoods, and many things have been said, and perhaps I'll say a little bit on that. And this government has invested in this country for growth and resilience. But Mr. Speaker, I just want to mention a few things that I heard from my good friend, and he is my good friend, the members for St. George, Northeast, and the leader of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, last year at budget he came with padlock and chains. And I was asking myself, what more is he going to do this time to embarrass this country? And lo and behold, when the audio went, what did he say? Sabotage. And I said, but our people are listening. They might be impressionable people, and you talk about the youth. Youth are impressionable. You come in this honorable house, and what you could do is to accuse the honorable people and the youths who are serving us in this very honorable house and do not have a voice, and to accuse them of sabotaging. You know, words must have action behind it, and they must have some weight, not just words for words. But Mr. Speaker, and the dear minister for the member or the leader of the opposition, he was very concerned as the audio went. What is the world saying? But you come and you put on padlock on you, as though we are a set of cannibals, wild people inside here. What did the world say about us then? And if we have a little technical glitch, and all countries have it, I hear about all kind of, what you call this thing, that when everything go and people have to pay to get it back and all kind of thing, ransom. And why are we alluding to sabotage when these things can happen ordinarily? Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that, you know, the leader of the opposition, he spoke about the sale of Greenleg, and he alluded to the fact that the member for St. George Northwest defended that and begged for it not to be sold because it was not a good business deal. And in this honorable house, although he alluded to it, he did not admit that it was the worst business deal in the history of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. So, Mr. Speaker, if he wants to see betterment for the country, then he must tell his friends, all you made a bad deal. And not come here and grandstand as though, you know, they just deserve a slap on the wrist. That is why we had to go back and pay that kind of money, and we shame to pay it because it was a government in office that sold this company for nothing to others, to WRB to be specific. And now it is on the backs of the Grenadian people to pay that kind of money. So it didn't start with us. The government of Grenada is now trying to fix what went wrong, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was trying to remind myself of when the leader of the opposition became leader of the opposition, because now he has a 2020 vision. He's seen everything that was wrong with the government that he was a part of. And what he's saying now, he's alluding that it happened in his time. But none of us here ever heard him speak about it. He sits in finance committee meetings, and he has a voice there, and he can speak to the budget and ask for certain things for the same people that he's defending, whether he says it's for the farmers or the fisher folk, but there's not a word, and the Hansard will show that. Very little is said to defend the people that he come in here to grandstand about. This is not about grandstanding. This is about caring and speaking where it is. Because, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues here, the issue of the contract, we are aware that something needs to be done. But my colleagues here speak about it all the time, that this is something that we have to do, and it is spoken about so that we can be cognizant of it and make whatever arrangements can be made. It cannot be made suddenly, but I know that this conversation has been held within the confines of cabinet. But he used to be with us. He used to be in the meetings, even though he was not in cabinet. He has friends, he had friends here. He has people that he speaks to up to now, but he never says, look, what can you do for that? But every time in the budget, he comes and he grandstands as though he cares about people. The leader of the opposition at one time, he had 2 salaries when we had 1. So he had better means to take care of people than we have. But Mr. Speaker, with my 1 salary, and I'm sure others do much more than he did when he had 2. And I don't know how many he has now, but he did have 2. Yes. So, Mr. Speaker, we can all make a difference. And we must sometimes come here and say, we may not want to do it because we might be too humble. But people might talk and say, well, so-and-so has done something for us. But it's always what government must do. And then be careful where you're getting the money from. You have so much of a deficit, but then it still adds. Give that to this, give that to that, give that to Mary, give that to Jim, and not one word of how we are going to change. This is about revenues and expenditure. And if we are already short, then tell us how we are going to generate revenues so that we can deal with all of the many problems we have. And we do have problems. And I think the budget reflects our understanding of the plight of the people in this COVID time. And our budget, to the best of the ability of the presenters and the minister, I think it seeks to respond to it in the best way possible. I have not heard many countries give stimulus 1, stimulus 2, stimulus 3, and continuing, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that cares about people and puts the money of the people to work for the people, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I heard about tourism and people working as slaves. I think this is so pathetic. This is so sad. Mr. Speaker, not only is tourism a significant revenue earner for the country, but it is also a significant employer. And so I don't know where the 12 came from, I don't know where the 15 came from, and I have to find out because something doesn't seem to balance out. But if you go in the hotels, and if you talk in high end, if you go in Silver Sands, the people who are, a number of the persons are in senior positions there. And I have been so proud, you know, they talk about the Imani program. When you go there and young people come, I was an Imani, you know, now I am head cook, I am head of this, I am head of that. Where is the leader of the opposition in all this? Talking about people being slaves. This tourism industry, with the high-end hotels that come, and even the smaller ones, they have given a better quality of life to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, Mr. Speaker. That is why I am so proud of the many persons in this gallery who have worked hard to ensure that tourism stays afloat, to ensure that we work with young people to educate and train them so that they can earn a living. I think it is a blow in the face, Mr. Speaker, to say that persons are here in the hotels being treated as slaves. So I know of maybe the 700 workers who are in Sandals. The majority are Grenadians. The 300 plus workers in Royalton, the majority are Grenadians. I said Sandals, Silver Sands, and all of these places, Calabash you go, you will see Grenadians in senior positions. And Royalton, I have it here, so I think he's out of touch and he's my good friend, so maybe one of these days I will take him to a little meal, a little dinner in the Royalton, Mr. Speaker, or one of the others. But Mr. Speaker, since time is of the essence, I will just say to the gentleman that what he says when he's standing there, grandstanding, he must say it where we could listen to him as well, because this is a government who listens, regardless to who it comes from. If it's a good recommendation for the country and the people of the country, we listen. Mr. Speaker, almost 2 years in the COVID-19 pandemic, and we are still experiencing negative impact in the tourism industry and civil aviation. Many of our businesses have yet to rebound, but this government has protected lives. It has effected lockdowns when it was necessary even though that would have reduced the revenues that this country earned. It makes strategic decisions to open up when conditions improved so that livelihoods can be restored and that livelihoods can be maintained. We have provided, this government have provided stimulus packages, as I mentioned before, not just to individuals, but to businesses so that they can stay afloat. They have offered loans on concessionary terms to small hotels and many other entities through the Grenada Development Bank. I say this, Mr. Speaker, in support of the theme for this budget, protecting livelihoods, protecting lives, safeguarding livelihoods, and investing for growth and resilience. Mr. Speaker, that one is gone. So, Mr. Speaker, not only are we a ministry of tourism, but also of resilience, climate change, climate resilience, environment. And the issue of climate change is ever present, and our environment is deteriorating at an alarming rate, making it more difficult for the deniers to dispute the significant negative impacts that climate change has on countries, especially small island developing states called SIDS, like Grenada. It also highlights the need for us to stop and take stock and to act differently, as this issue not only affects the health of the economy, it affects the health of the people. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is very important that we do take stock. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, that we could not sit back and let WRB continue on the destructive pathway of using fossil fuel with making absolutely no. And what a total of $20.9 million have been allocated for the budget year 2022. It is a slight increase, but we will monitor and see how it goes, and we will be practices and what goes on in Grenada. And the World Food Travel Association studied it, and we were the first to be announced. There might have been a few subsequently, but our cuisine has not gone unnoticed. We have upgraded our tourism information system, and so now data is more readily available for visitors. So they can go on the site and see what is happening where and make decisions as to where they would like to go. And also the data, that whatever information they input, that would be used to guide the decision makers within the tourism sector as to what tourists like and what best can be done to give them the experience of their life when they come into Grenada. An animated map has also been created for our visitors so that they can go onto that map and they can explore to find out where, what is happening and how it's happening, and decide which villages that they do want to go. Mr. Speaker, National Sustainable Tourism Development Plan. We would have spoken about that, and I would have alluded to it in the 2020 presentation. I'm happy to say that the draft has been made ready for us, and it has been distributed for feedback, and the final report will be delivered sometime at the end of this month or the beginning of December, respectively, and this plan will be rolled out. This plan would guide the tourism industry, what we do in the next 5 to 10 years period, Mr. Speaker. There was significant input by a number of Grenadians from different walks of life, and I believe that it reflects our culture, our heritage. It reflects what we can do with it, and I believe it's a well-prepared document, and I look forward to see the rolling out of this Sustainable Tourism Development Plan. In community tourism, significant progress has been made in our thrust towards community tourism. And therefore, the Ministry of Tourism and the Grenada Tourism Authority, they provided technical support to several groups, rural and urban. And one would ask, what is the importance of community tourism? First of all, when people come, they like to interact with people in the natural environment. And especially now in this COVID times, where persons have been in quarantine and they've been locked in and cannot go out, people like to go into open spaces. And the communities, the rural areas can provide more open spaces than the city can. So, Mr. Speaker, the community tourism is very valuable. It has the history, is well preserved in many instances, and the sharing of our history is something that tourists like to hear. So, Mr. Speaker, it is something that we are going to be working on as the tourism industry rebounds, and I hope it continues to rebound with Omicron in the air. We don't know what is going to happen, but we keep forging forward while it is good in Grenada, and we trust God that it will remain so for quite a long while. Mr. Speaker, the reopening of cruise ships. The first cruise ship came in on the 9th of November. We had extensive discussions, long discussions, with Ministry of Health, with the cruise lines, with other key stakeholders, seeking to determine whether we should or shouldn't get into the industry at this time. However, Mr. Speaker, common sense prevailed, because in May, in the summer, we were offered some cruise calls. Every other island that was offered that, they took it up. But at that point in time, we wanted to be safe, we wanted to be secure, and we felt we didn't have enough persons vaccinated in the country, and that we hadn't had enough exposure to the virus. Not that we're looking for it, but it does confer some natural immunity, and therefore it was decided not to. And if we had turned those cruise ships back for a second time, they would have just forgotten us. It has happened before, that one cruise line, we had a problem with the cruise line, and they left, and they didn't come back until about 15 years, Mr. Speaker. So in a meeting, I had to say to the team, we have to do something. And I again want to thank the Ministry of Health for working with us to come up with the guidelines to allow a safe return of cruise. And while there is no 100% assurance, I think the precautions we have taken, the protocols that we have established, they would take us a long way in keeping us safe. Mr. Speaker, I want to just mention briefly the issue of vaccines, but can I please ask how much time I have left? So
hey, just that, man. You just
No, I want to know, because I have to spread it out.
You have according to my watch, but
55
you have an hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak of the issue of vaccines, because there is still some controversy. There is still quite a bit, in my opinion, way too much vaccine hesitancy not just in our country, regionally, globally. It is a problem, and every government, every head of state is trying to seek innovative ways to get people to get vaccinated. And as you hear about more strains, then the concern becomes, and the anxiety becomes even greater, because the more unvaccinated people you have in the country, the greater is the risk for them. And therefore, in negotiations with the cruise ships, Ministry of Health insisted that everyone who sets foot on Grenadian soil must be fully vaccinated. And therefore, the issue of reciprocity came. If you are telling us that to come into your country, we must be fully vaccinated, then the people who serve us, the people who provide any kind of service order, whether it's the taxi driver, whether it's the vendor, whether it's the tour operators, they too have to be fully vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, I personally, I only can say I felt it was fair that if we are demanding it, and we demanded that for the safety and the health of the people in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. The health of other people matters. So we can't say only Grenadian health matters, and the visitors, whatever happens to them, happens to them. So that was an agreement. And it did cause some stir. But I hope that Persons who are uncertain will get informed. I hope the Ministry of Health, in spite of the amount of work they have been doing, will do even more to educate persons and get them on board. Because we have been stuck in we were stuck in the 21,000 for weeks and months. And now we stuck, we like in the doldrums again, in the 30. In the 30, we 30 what? 33? 33, I see the member for the South showing up 5, we 35. But I'm hearing that we need to get about 80, 90, ideally 100%. But if we got a little 85, a little 90, we would feel more comfortable. So we're not in a comfort zone, but we're in the best place we can be so that we can think about doing business. So I hope that more persons can be educated, more persons can be encouraged, Mr. Speaker. And I also hope that leaders, persons who are leaders, whether they're old, whether they're young, but if you put yourself as a leader, take a stand on issues that concern the health of your people. Tell us if you're vaccinated. Tell us if you're going to do a booster. Tell us if you're not and why you're not. And tell us how to run a country that is dependent on tourism, not only tourism, but significantly dependent on tourism. And by the way, globally, the world is dependent on tourism. You'll find that when other countries like UK and so say they stayed open, they're not staying open for the people to go out. They are staying open for people to come in. So that livelihoods, and that is one of the issues of the themes, livelihoods can be preserved. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, some people are unhappy. Some people are being encouraged to be unhappy, you know? And I hope that we can all take one hymn sheet and be true patriotic Grenadians and serve this country and guide our people well. So, Mr. Speaker, we have started, quite a few cruise ships have come in, I've lost count, but between the 9th of November and May, we expect at least 200 calls. Mr. Speaker, for a startup and for a country that started late in dialogue with cruise ships to give an exact position as to where we are, because we were very hesitant, and we still could command 200 calls in this COVID time, Mr. Speaker. I say hats off to Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and hats off to the team who worked unceasingly to get that to happen. Now, Mr. Speaker, we still have some more persons who are outside of the loop. But before I go into that, I want to speak to the opportunities that COVID has given to us in spite of the havoc that it has wreaked in our country. And what happened in the initial stage is that some of the more established tour operators, they got the lion's share. And they are the ones who negotiated, they got the lion's share. I have no problem with that. But then the National Taxi Association, they were crying out. The bus operators, they were crying out. And we had several meetings with them, and we looked at how we could make some things work. The Grandans, craft and spice vendors, they also were complaining. And therefore, we sought to forge an alliance between the taxi drivers. Because one of the things that the Grandans the craft vendors said to us, we don't get a tour coming into here. It's the odd tourist who just, wanders around that comes inside here. And I thought that having a well-structured place, well-organized, we thought, why shouldn't they have a tour as well? So that you bring people there. Because it's nice to have visitors. It's nice for them to enjoy our pristine and serene and safe country. But they must leave something behind. And therefore, we must create the enabling environment for our visitors to be able to vend their craft. And so the marriage between National Taxi Association and the craft vendors, that was started because of that. And so now they've started to operate. But we know Grandans is a much sought after beach, one of the best in the world. And I do not think that we can just have one group, one alliance, hogging all of the area that is exposed. I want to be very careful, because the last time I got my neck chopped off, I don't know how it got stuck back when I mentioned about leaving us a special area for the tourists. Now, my aim was to protect other people, because we know what happens with the virus. However, whatever the misinterpretation is, I realize that people, all Grenadian people, they protect their beaches. They guard it very jealously. And so we realized within the tourism sector, within the Ministry of Tourism and the GTA, that we have to be very careful with how we handle it, because they have a right to their beach. And so what we have come up with thus far is a section right in front of the craft market, because we do have beach chair, they don't vend, they rent, beach chair rentals that the tourists use. And there are some tourists that all they do is come, take the water taxis, or take a taxi and go straight to Grand Anse Beach. And if we only left it to one alliance, it would not be fair. And so now we're working to see how this thing will roll out. For the past couple calls, we were piloting how this would work. Mr. Speaker, I believe it could work. While we cannot tell Grenadians that they cannot go where the beach chairs are, we agreed with the cruise ships that we're going to have a bubble, which means that from the time the cruise ship, the passengers come off the cruise ship, then they will be managed, they will be directed in a certain way, so that they're not all over the place, they don't wander wherever they want to, but they come off, they go onto a bus or a taxi or whatever, and they're taken to certain attraction sites. The other attraction sites do not have that kind of problem, because you don't have that many locals there on any given day. But Grand Anse does provide that for us. So what we say is, put them right in front the vendors market. Let our Grenadian people who rent the chairs use that space, because everybody has to live. And a lot of these people have not been making a living for quite a while. So let them rent out the chairs to them, and we'll beg the tourists to stay within those confines of the chair and go straight down to the beach until the situation changes, that we can open up. But now we have an agreement for a bubble. And other islands still have a bubble. But when other islands break up the bubble and they say you could walk to go wherever, then we'll see how we get it. But we are well aware that we cannot tell our beloved citizens not to use the Grand Anse Beach. So we hope that there can be a reasonable compromise in that regard. And other vendors in other areas have come to us, but Mr. Speaker, we're working with it, one group of vendors at a time, one group of players in the industry at a time. And again, commendations are in order for those who help to make that happen. Mr. Speaker, a lot of training had to be done, a lot of sessions, refresher training, health sessions for persons involved in the industry as reminders, because we have been out of the industry, out of business for quite a while, but it has worked, and we will continue as necessary to update and to inform our people. Mr. Speaker, I want to move to the area of airlift. And Grenada has benefited from the pent-up demand, because people were so locked down. Now, it's amazing. I would have thought that until maybe COVID disappeared, you wouldn't see a lot of people who want to travel. But interestingly, because of that, people want to travel. And therefore, we have to adapt, just as we adapt to climate change and so on, we have to adjust and make things happen. And again, a lot of changes had to take place at the airport. Restructuring, reconfiguring the arrival and departure and all of these things, trying to ensure social distance. And sometimes in trying to do that, Mr. Speaker, there are times, especially on a Wednesday and a Saturday, when you have some large planes coming in at the same time, where we're still struggling for space, and some of our visitors have to line up outside to come in. We know that there's a saying, and I believe it is very true, that first impressions are always lasting. And if when we receive our visitors and they have to line up outside, it is a bad thing. So I remember when we launched the expansion of the airport project, I remember somebody saying, we're in COVID, we don't need an airport. Somebody who I thought would have known better. But the point is, if you close down, people will go elsewhere. That is the reality. But you will stagnate things. The very fish that we want to export, the soursop and the other agricultural produce, you must have your airport open. And you cannot open the airport just for one Amerijet to come, take something and go out. You have to stay open. Because there are certain logistical things that we require to do by ICAO that we cannot just open, let an airplane in, let an airplane out, and close and send people back home. Besides that, that's not business. And I think the staff there have done an excellent job, Mr. Speaker, to accommodate some large planes. I remember times going to countries like Barbados and I see 3-4 planes in there. You know, a British Airways, a Virgin, and other things. And I said, but when Grenada don't have that? Because it looked like it's just one plane now and then and one plane. But our tourism industry has grown, and it is growing. And if you're not forward thinking, and you're waiting until it grows, and people have to stand up on the tarmac, then you're in trouble, Mr. Speaker. So now is the time for the airport expansion. And I call it phase 1 because there's still a lot more to do. So we have American Airlines that is doing 3 days a week. Come very soon, come December, it will be doing daily flights into Grenada. American Airlines also does a run from Charlotte to Grenada and comes in on Saturdays, and it has started, I think, last Saturday, and it will continue, and we know about the JetBlues come every day, and so on. And we have the other airlines that fly the Caribbean. You get the occasional LIAT. I hardly hear about them, but staff assured me that they do come. And you have Caribbean Airlines and Inter-Caribbean. And I checked the load factor. It is looking pretty good, Mr. Speaker. So we're not in a bad place. And with the opening up and the removal of the quarantine for persons who are fully vaccinated, then the hoteliers are telling us that they're getting more bookings for December and other months during the winter. So I hope this will give them a lift. They have been in a very bad place. They've had a very bad period, all of those in the industry, and I look forward to see more things happening. Mr. Speaker, as we speak about all of the international flights and the intra-regional flights, charity begins at home. And if we look at what has been happening, and I hope my dear sister, the member for Carriacou and Petite Martinique, I hope she's there somewhere listening. I know she would want to hear this good news, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have, and I think other persons from Carriacou and Petite Martinique may be interested as well. We have had some difficulties with airlift between Carriacou and Petite Martinique. It has not been working for a while, and now SVG Air, which is the airline that provided the services between Carriacou and mainland in not recent time, for a long period, they have now downsized to the occasional charter, and that is untenable because there are individuals who want to fly to Carriacou. They may not like the boat. Some of us don't do the seafaring too well, but they can't charter a plane. So in other words, they can't get to Carriacou, and vice versa. Kayaks cannot come down either. And so we have been looking at what our options are. And in having discussions with civil aviation people who know about planes, we have been advised that we should upgrade from the 9-seater. Because, Mr. Speaker, if everybody's like me, I don't know if it's better to be on a little 9-seater up there or to be on the plane rocking and feeling sick. And a lot of persons, sometimes, in all fairness, that 9-seater, the Highlander, would have had very few passengers. Sometimes one, sometimes two, sometimes it's full. Sometimes you can't get a flight, and sometimes it doesn't have, and maybe it has not been as lucrative as the owners would like it to be. And we too would like people who ply the routes to run a profitable business. But having done a little bit of research, empirical, what we're picking up is that some people, if they get a bigger plane, they will go to and from between the mainland and Carriacou more easily. And also we're thinking, what I've been told is that Liat used to fly that kind of plane, the 19-seater, Twin Otter, between Grenada and Carriacou before. And therefore, it's the same runway. If anything, it has grown, it hasn't gotten any smaller. And having had discussions, we have been told that it could happen. So we have made a request to ECA, that is the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, that operates and covers a few of the Eastern Caribbean islands. We have asked them to review the issue and to let us know what the thoughts are on that and what technical measures we must implement for safety and security and everything for creating that, for not just creating the air bridge is already there, but enhancing that air bridge between Grenada and Carriacou. So, Mr. Speaker, we have had discussions, we have had proposals, we have a team who have looked at it, and we are moving full speed ahead to formalize our discussions to the point where very soon something can happen. It will not happen like tomorrow because a Twin Otter has to be sought. I am told that it's one of the smaller planes that are in high demand, so it has to be sought, it has to be leased and brought into Grenada. So it will take some time. We are told that it may take about 90 days, but it could take less. So, Mr. Speaker, we look forward to having an improved, a larger and an improved service to Carriacou. So that is all I will say at this time, except to assure this Honorable House and especially the persons in Carriacou that we're doing our utmost to make it happen as soon as possible. I also wanted to mention that it is no secret that Carriacou has a lot of assets in terms of beauty, in terms of things people would like to go there and do, places people would like to go to in Carriacou, and we believe that the tourism industry could get a boost from having that aircraft, but we know that we have our work cut out of us. GTA, the Ministry of Tourism, other stakeholders, we have to market it well, we have to encourage persons to up the game over there to provide the kind of experience that tourists want, and there has been a good start. I know GTA has been doing quite a lot with them, and maybe we'll hear, I leave that for when it comes to the area of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, I cannot leave airlift without speaking about cargo and the shipment of cargo. Usually our fish and farm produce, especially our salsa, they are transported by Amerijet. We have had the Minister for Fisheries, the Minister for Agriculture, we've had several discussions on it. Discussions have been held with some of the main exporters. It has also been held with the Amerijet team, and they have promised to increase the space capacity for Grenada, and we're looking to see the rollout of that. But even so, some of the producers are saying period, they will dedicate a full flight to Grenada, from Miami to Grenada and back, but that is for a limited period, and we have to continue to have dialogue to make sure that the need for airlift or cargo lift is there for our farmers. So I continue to work with my colleague ministers of agriculture and fisheries, and also I've been having dialogue with the senator who is a representative for agriculture, and I believe that we can come up with a very good means of assuring the export of our produce to Miami and other shores. Mr. Speaker, investment in human capital. The people of Grenada are at the heart of the destination. One of the things that everybody talks about, the people are so nice, the people are so, friendly, they're so helpful and things like that. And it's one of the reasons Grenada has a lot of repeat visitors, and it's because of the warmth and the friendliness of our people. But Mr. Speaker, we cannot stay stagnant. We have to find ways to develop our human resources, to give them the skills that they need, to hone their skills so that they can provide a better service, not as slaves, but as service providers. You do not have to be a slave to provide a service. And I believe that is what is happening in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. So, Mr. Speaker, the Grenada Tourism Authority has introduced a leadership program whereby it has mentored some young people, some bright young people, and given them an experience within, under the umbrella of the GTA, to the point where they have selected one young person who is going to head the UK market, the UK sales market for us. I feel so very proud. So many times we have to look outside, but when we can look inside and when we can develop our own people, I think this is priceless. Mr. Speaker, in terms of human resource development, not so long ago, we had the launch of the WISH Foundation, WISH. That is the West Indies School of Hospitality. And, well, hospitality, we know what that is. And only a few days ago, sometimes people do speak to us too. We have friends too, and they call us or they tell us things as well. And so somebody was saying to me, why don't you have hospitality, arts, and tourism related subjects in the school? And I said, well, that is a good question. I really can't answer. So I know I have a question to discuss. I have an issue to discuss with my colleague. And the young lady said, and she works in one of the ministries, but she loves tourism. And she was saying, well, at TAMCC, what is offered is very limited. And I said to her, this project was launched recently. And it was a partnership between some local entrepreneurs with a very prestigious and a renowned hospitality school, the Cornell University, in the United States. I think they might have branches elsewhere, but it's based there. And discussions are being held to finalize the agreement so that that school could start at the earliest possible time. But Mr. Speaker, this university offers a wide range in this hospitality sector. And what is so good again, elsewhere, but it's based there. And discussions are being held to finalize the agreement so that that school could start at the earliest possible time. But Mr. Speaker, this university offers a wide range in this hospitality sector. And what is so good again, elsewhere, but it's based there. And discussions are being held to finalize the agreement so that that school could start at the earliest possible time. But Mr. Speaker, this university offers a wide range in this hospitality sector. And what is so good again, National Civil Aviation Organization, usually referred to as ICAO, and ECA, I mentioned that before, to mitigate shortcomings every now and then at the airport, you must do, I call it dry runs. What do they call it? They call it an audit, where they check on certain things. They check on the equipment that you have. They check on how you handle things. They might do some sort of dry run, a simulation, and if they find certain weaknesses, and the people come from abroad, if they find certain weaknesses, then that is a mark against our country, or it is a mark against the organization that is responsible for all of the I think it's 5 countries that are under the ECA. And so we have to be on the cutting edge of the game. So during this past year, the findings of the audit were reviewed, and with the help of ICAO and ECA, a lot of those things was put in place. I had a meeting recently with the team at the airport. And, you know, I was really impressed with the mood of the people, with how the meeting, you know, the tone of the meeting had changed from the previous meeting that I'd had with them, because maybe they didn't feel that enough was happening. But now a lot is happening to improve. Equipment is being purchased, X-rays, all kinds of things are being gotten in a very difficult time when revenues are not being generated. But if you wait for when things get good, when COVID is over, then you don't have an airport to run. So in spite of the airport not generating enough revenues, and again, the government of Grenada had to come to its rescue with a soft loan, but they have been doing very well, and I hope that in the not too distant future, that would be a thing. The support, financial support from government, would be a thing of the past. I also want to compliment the airport over the years, because having worked with the airport and been a minister for civil aviation more than once, I was not aware that most airports are subsidized by their governments. And when I went to Montreal at the headquarters of ICAO, and they complimented Grenada because they said Grenada is one of the few airports where they make a profit. So I am looking forward, and I hope the team is listening, that to see the day when they get back to that profit making. But it means that we have to do certain things right. We have to get vaccinated. We still have to do what we have to do to keep the disease on and to prevent us for ourselves from getting it. And even if we get it milder. And if we more resistant to it, then we cannot pass it on as easily. So there are a number of things. There are a number of things that we need to do. Mr. Speaker, can I ask the time, please? You say 8 minutes? All right. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want to mention briefly and then run to my constituency. I just want to mention briefly that quite a lot has happened. And it will take the whole day, it will take everybody's 1 hour and some. So we will have to find a way to communicate with our Grenadian public, but just to let them know that our airport project is going to start. And also, I am very proud of what Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority has done. Persons who apply the western route would recall that for months, for over a long extended period, there used to be smoke and fires in that area. And even the people who lived in the area, it was a very uncomfortable and uncertain health situation for them. But we have gotten that under control. A lot happened, working with Royal Grenada Police Force. They got fancy equipment, they got drones that could sense when there was heat under the surface and alert them before the heat got out of control and you know, converted into a fire. And there's quite a lot that has been done. So those again who travel along that route would see that some work is a lot of heavy duty equipment. What they're doing is they're terracing that old landfill now, and they're going to be covering it up with some dirt, and they're going to put vegetation, grass it up so it will be pleasant to the eyes. And in the meantime, they have refurbished 2 of the other landfills, and they're building 2. and they're 90% completed, and Grenada Solid Waste Management Authority would, at least perseverance will look much better than it ever did before, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot under solid waste, but what we would notice is that the garbage collection has improved significantly in the areas. We had 6 contractors, but in the beginning of 2021, it was expanded to 9 to give persons smaller area that were more manageable. And so we have not heard as many complaints as before, and we hope that we can keep it that way and continue to work to separate waste. Green waste, leaves and trees and branches shouldn't be going into our landfill. Bottles, they could be recycled. Plastics. So there's a lot that is going to be taken on, Mr. Speaker. But before I get the bar from entering Victoria, Mr. Speaker, I just need a few minutes to speak on my constituency. Mr. Speaker, again, we have invested in human capital, and I want to really highlight the importance of the Empower. Empower program seeks to take young men who are at risk. Maybe 1 or 2 of them may have gone to prison already, or they're at risk of being in prison or getting into trouble, and they rehabilitate them, give them some training, personal development, all kinds of areas, and they train them in a skill. And they also give them money to start up with that skill. So if they teach you landscaping, when you finish and you complete the course, and I know there was a graduation recently, and quite a few of them graduated from St. Mark, a few dropped out for whatever reasons, but I hope they will continue. And we have another 21 lined up to start again. But this program has changed the lives of many persons, and I look forward to it continuing. Similar to the Imani, I'm giving you a chance to give me a little thing there now. Mr. Speaker, the skills that they are taught, I looked at it. Electrical installation, CVQ, heavy duty machinery, plumbing, and a few other things that I can't see now. So the thing is, these are skills that are in high demand. Plumbing, every time somebody, a pipe bursts or something, you want somebody. So I want to applaud the Department of Youth and the Minister for Youth for the work that they are doing. Our Imani numbers, they look very good. I don't want to say it less. Somebody has, if I have more than somebody and they get dissatisfied. But with numbers looking good, and while everybody doesn't have the same level of achievement of successes, I've seen enough Imanis reach to good levels, attain good levels of professionalism, and I believe that the program is a good one. It needs some tweaking, but I believe it has worked, and with what the trend that is taking place in that ministry now, I expect to see a lot more. Mr. Speaker, renewable energy, we have that in St. Mark too. And if you travel in St. Mark, Mr. Speaker, you will see that some of our street lights are solar lights. And we have persons who could not afford to get their houses connected and so on. We got them hooked up with a nice little system of a solar system in their house, so that they don't have to worry at the end of the month to pay any light bill. But you know, Mr. Speaker, this started out of a dire need to light up some areas where we felt it was unsafe for people to walk at night. And after repeated requests for street lights, at one time, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so we requested lights, and we requested light. At one time, every year or every 6 months or whatever, you presented a list and you got some. And after a while, that just stopped. I don't know if it was my constituency that had a problem with WRB or WR had a problem with us, but we got absolutely no lights. And so the dark areas remained dark. The lights that went out were not replaced, and the areas where they were asking for new lights, it didn't happen. I hope that under new admin and guidance, that can happen. But but I want to see some more solar lights. We want to see less fossil fuel, less diesel being used to generate electricity. And I know my colleague minister in the ministry would not be happy if I didn't say that. I would have left some of the environmental issues, but I know that he will be there very powerful to defend those issues. So, Mr. Speaker, the people are very happy, and we will continue with doing our little bit for renewable energy so that we can help save planet Earth. Mr. Speaker, our schools, St. Mark's Secondary School was in need of some serious work, not just a facelift. And we were waiting for a while, but it was a wait. It was a wait that was worth it, because in this year, the St. Mark's Secondary School got a facelift in some areas. It got a complete new building in one area because it was a sort of prefab, and a new wing. And when I spoke to the principal, she said to me, no, all of the children can be there, because they had some temporary classrooms, and one of the buildings was covering a basketball court. So now I have been requested to resurface the basketball court, and well, basketball, I guess they do netball as well. And so we have to do that under special project. But now that school can house all of the children very comfortably, and we're happy for that. Samaritan Presbyterian School, fully refurbished, the preschool and the primary school, and also the playground, and they are very happy with it. Bonnet Government School has been refurbished. Mr. Speaker, the school next to Bonnet Government School, which is a special education school, that school has gotten approval for a grant from the under BNTF for expansion of that school. That school has done so well, and I want to compliment the team there, to the point where these are children who have challenges. And in this year, one of the children, she passed the CPA, and I don't know if she started school in St. Rose, but she was planning to go there. So sometimes we see persons who have some disabilities and we think they cannot function, but that school up in Bonnet, they're doing a fantastic job, and with the expansion, maybe more children will get opportunity to go to that school. Mr. Speaker, in terms of roads, several farm roads were done. I just want to single out the Fountain Farm Road, because it prevented the farmers. There was a major slide, and 3/4 of the road slipped away down into the river, and so the vehicles could not pass. And therefore, a lot of work was done, very technical work, nice looking work, but more importantly, again, we have restored the access for the farmers, because that was the problem there, and that has been fixed. So, Mr. Speaker, Red Mud again had a problem over the many years, and that is an area I share with my colleague, the member for St. Patrick's West. That road is under construction as well, and the farmers in that area are very happy for it. A number of other roads have been done, but they're there to be seen, so I would not go into detail, but I want to mention the house repair. Previously, people arranged for the material and they got it, and some used it well, and others, they couldn't go the next step. They didn't have the ability to get the house repair done on their homes for one reason or the other. And therefore, this government saw it fit, on the request of the Minister for Housing. And now we have a brigade. We have a brigade, I think there's 10 of them. And they do a fantastic job, and I want to compliment that team for what they do in the community. So now no board staying on the house, no board getting termites, because in quick time after they're delivered, they are done. And we have used up all of the monies allocated. I wish we could have gotten a little more, but I'm not complaining, Mr. Speaker. But this is a project that is well done. And I speak about housing. We have completed the Diamond Housing Project that is that has 130 units, 1 bedroom and 2. It's a 2-bedroom. It's a low-income housing project, so it's for people who don't make a lot of money. This is the third housing project in Diamond, but the other two were more for middle-income persons. And so I'm pleased that the lower-income persons can have access to a little more decent housing as well. And I'm hoping that very early in the new year, we can see the distribution. I know they were working on the utilities, the electrical and the water. I'm not sure where they are with that, but I hope that by the new year, because people keep asking me, when is the housing project going to be distributed? There's a demand for it, and I know it will be well received by all who have applied and who would have succeeded. Mr. Speaker, we also have the toilet program, the flush toilet, The flush toilet, one where you press, not the pull chain one. When I was small, and you know, we're talking about young people and old people like me. We know about the pull chain one. Well, no pull chain one. The nice flush silent toilet there. And you know, this is a program that again is a big game changer for people, you know, where they didn't have the facility, they either had to use the public ones and so we're changing the lives of people, one family at a time, one household at a time. But every time a household gets it, it makes a difference to the quality of life, Mr. Speaker. So that is what we do about livelihoods. We save lives, we safeguard lives through the ministry, the gatekeepers, Ministry of Health, but we also, we improve the quality of life. Not the same life, we don't just save that same life. We create opportunities for improvement in the quality of life. Mr. Speaker, we assist students to go to school. TAMCC NULO. We assist them to pay their school fees through the government of Grenada, of course. I can't afford that one salary I have. But, Mr. Speaker, we pay the school fees to the government. We give them a little stipend every month so that they can pay the bus to go. And it makes a lot of difference to whether somebody just stays at home and doesn't reach their full potential or be given the opportunity, or whether they can go. Hot lunches, we provide that too. My staff, and I see some of them there in the gallery, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the efforts that they make for needy persons. Sometimes you give only needy persons, but sometimes you just give an elderly person who likes to know that they are appreciated. And so they cook that food and go out and give some hot lunches. We don't give the whole constituency at the same time, but we do villages so that it's more manageable, and they're quite appreciative of that. We give food hampers. And again, with the COVID time, some persons lost their job, some persons are disadvantaged, some persons have plantains they can sell, So we look at all of these things and we have to help them. So we do the food hampers, and what we do is, when we know that they're diabetic, we don't give them all of these pastas and the flour and so, we give them vegetables, and we try to buy it from local person, a little cabbage, a little pak choy, so that we can teach them how to eat healthy. Mr. Speaker, a lot of training has been going on. We taught people how to preserve fruits, how to sew and make uniform, and we're hoping that come next year, we'll have a number of uniform when school has been a little bit iffy, but for the past year, but I hope that COVID will give us a chance, and we'll be able, those women who have been trained will be able to sell the food. Mr. Speaker, going forward, the Western Corridor Road improvements, the Minister for Finance alluded to it, a very important project. And I applaud that project, not only because of the need, but the manner in which it was handled. The consultants, whoever the companies, they held virtual meetings, they sought our assistance to invite people and share the link so that people can raise their concerns, tell them what are the concerns on the Western Corridor, starting from the, where's the National Stadium? Somewhere so. From the National Stadium right up past St. Mark's Secondary School. And we have some dangerous areas, we have some problem areas, some narrow corners, which they call the hairpin corners, and persons, bus drivers were encouraged to come and so on, and they expressed their concerns. I expect that there may be a follow-up meeting at some further time, but I like that idea of consulting and asking people questions, and I hope to see that some of the issues that were raised would be implemented in the project rollout. Work will continue on the former Victoria Hotel, which has been allocated for the community for business stimulation, the implementation of our community tourism, the Tufton Hall Trails and the Rainbow Waterfall, the startup of the St. Mark's Sustainable Community Tourism Project, the implementation of the Ministry of Agriculture Land Bank Project, where a number of persons would have, well, the public was invited to make requests to get some lands for agriculture purposes. And the ministry so far has made a selection. They have started to train persons virtually, train them in the business of agriculture and train them how to manage business. And I hope very soon, perhaps in the not too distant future, we will see things happening. Mr. Speaker, I must speak about the construction of the Bonnet Bridge that will start. That is a bridge that was approved under BNTF, and we hope to see that happen soon. The upgrade of the Victoria, Waltham, and Duquesne Fish Market, that has been advertised already, and not advertised, bids have been sent out. So I hope that the bids will get in soon and come as soon as the new year starts, that can happen. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the people of St. Mark for the opportunity they've afforded me to represent them time and time again, and the support that they will have given me over the years in whatever we have done. And I continue to pledge my support to them and my services to them. I had a photo that I would have liked projected, Mr. Speaker, but it didn't work, you know, and the photo was of this humble servant going out to vaccinate her people in St. Mark. I am proud of it. I am proud of it because, you know, I have learned from this team here what it is to serve. And I've learned from our teacher, our Prime Minister, what it is to serve. And the people who know me know that I'm not afraid of anything. So the other day, the photo I wanted to project was on Saturday. We did some testing, and we didn't have much testing, but we did some vaccinating. And the rain came, and there was more pools of water, and the people who came, their feet were going in. So I went and borrowed a broom, and I was sweeping. So the volunteers with me couldn't be the minister. How you sweep here? Because they're not from St. Mark, they're from other places. I say the people here would expect me to do that because they know that I serve them and I serve them well. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank this honorable house. I'm not sure. I guess we might have a little setting before Christmas. So I would hold back my well wishes for that time. And I want to put on record, there is a long list of people, but I know you have been very patient. All of the stakeholders, a number of persons came together to make tourism happen. And they know who they are. I want to thank all of them, but I cannot leave my PS out. And the chairman of the GTA and the CEO and the chairman of Grenada Airports Authority, and all of the team. Look around. I feel proud to see them here. I don't know if they come to hear me make a mistake, but I believe they're here because they want me to represent them well. And so they have come here to encourage me. And my constituents, they're here. I feel proud to serve. I feel proud to be a member of the team. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Parliamentary Representative for St. Mark. At this time, it is now 1:45. And I promised that we would go to lunch at 1. So, for someone to start, and I'll have to stop you at 1, I don't think it would be in your best interest. So we should adjourn for lunch at this time and return at 1:45. So I'm giving you 1 hour for lunch. Lunch is already prepared. So, honorable members, this House now stands adjourned to return.